Laura Jane Clark is a Glasgow and London-based architect known as the one with the Midas touch on BBC Two's Your Home Made Perfect. She's famous for turning problem pads into heavenly homes. So who is the woman that first spotted potential in £20,000 worth of old underground toilet space in Crystal Palace that she then creatively transformed into affluent living space? It is time to challenge design perspectives with TV's most loved architect from Your Home Made Perfect. Laura, welcome. How are you doing? Welcome, Laura. So now you're based in Glasgow at the moment. You're bi-coastal, as it were. London and Glasgow.
Bi-coastal. I love that.
Bi-coastal.
Yes, I am. Yeah, that's right. My office is still based in London, and a lot of the work I do is still in the southeast. But I live up in Glasgow, so I still do, lots of Scottish stuff as well.
So welcome to the Designerati podcast. It's a pleasure to have you, and you are our first Zoom podcast. So this is an exciting experience, but it's going so well. Please tell me if you can't hear or there's any crackling on the line. Now, I'm fascinated by so many things about your career, but first of all, we have this format, and it's called an icebreaker. Now, you are a well-known TV presenter and a prolific architect in this industry. Is there anything that you can share that people might not know about you and they wouldn't necessarily associate with you? For example, Oliver Heath, he used to be a fire eater. A little known fact.
Well, I used to do burlesque from 2007 to 2009.
Oh la la! Nipple tassels and everything. Fabulous, Laura.
Everything.
Fabulous. You are very Dita Von Teese.
Well, she was my hero.
You look like her.
Oh, come on.
You do. You have this kind of elegance around you, a kind of a natural beauty. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, well, I mean, she is just absolutely fabulous. I used to love the kind of, obviously the exhibition. I'm a very introverted extrovert, if that makes sense. But I love that kind of the showmanship of it. I used to do lots of kind of stories. So it wasn't big fans and feather boas and things. It was mainly stories. So I'd make up kind of stories, and I'd edit all the music to make it work. Had lots of strobe lights and kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it.
What did you love about it? Because there's something, in the background, you have this beautiful deep blue colour behind you, which kind of is almost like, it's resplendent of the elegant era that burlesque is set within.
Yeah, I loved that kind of, obviously the horrendous stuff that went on in the past, but also there was this kind of emergence of the female, not female form, but the female as a kind of entertainer. And I kind of, on the surface of it, because obviously everything in reality wasn't great for an awful lot of people, but that kind of surface expression is so fascinating. And I do love to be extroverted. I used to compete mixed martial arts as well. And I think, although it's absolutely terrifying, I kind of love being on stage. I love performing, whether that's fighting or whether that's dancing or whether it's giving talks or, on television. I do love that kind of expressional, that expression side of my work.
And I want to dive into your whole TV career in just a moment. But first of all, I want to hear about how you actually arrived upon architecture as a career.
Well, I always wanted to be a surgeon. So my dad was a surgeon, and I used to just be completely, that was all I wanted to do. And I mean, even down to like eating a boiled egg and getting a bit of shell in your mouth. As a kid, you're like, oh, I've got a shell in my mouth. My dad always used to say, I'll make you a better doctor. So I'm like, okay, eating eggshells, going like, I'm going to be a better doctor. But I kind of realised when I was about 16, I moved to Glasgow. Oh, sorry, I went to Glasgow just for, just like a little holiday. And we went to a Macintosh exhibition, and I remember looking down at these sketchbooks And just the way he'd drawn the kind of the sky and the clouds and everything. And I just had this kind of revelation. I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be an architect, and I needed to move to Glasgow. And it was just the weirdest thing.
And you were
so
where?
From going
you, were,
on Blue,
you were in Wales when you had this revelation?
So we'd gone to Glasgow for the weekend. So I grew up in North Wales. I was actually born in Scotland, but I grew up in North Wales. And it was just, I just had this kind of moment.
An aha moment.
Yeah, totally. And then kind of trying to persuade my dad, who was basically going to retire when I'd finished uni, to extend that by another 2 years was quite tricky. And also a job, like medicine is incredibly hard, but, fairly well paid once you'd got through those stages. Going to something like architecture, where there's no guarantee of a job, there's no kind of set path. It took quite a while for my parents to go, okay, that was always saying, well, you can do surgery as a job and architecture as a hobby. You can't really do it the other way around.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so his perception of architecture was that it wasn't it was less formal than being a surgeon, despite the absolutely. 7-year process at university.
Yeah, and I was one of the first years that was paid, you had to pay to go to university. So obviously that kind of the time, 7 years and opposed to 5 years was obviously kind of was part of it. But I think we don't have any architect friends. We don't have any architects in the family, although my parents and my grandparents, very into design. My dad makes jewelry. My mum's very artistic, makes, used to make all my clothes, and she still makes her own clothes. So we come from a very artistic family, but no architects. So I think it was just that unknown, it was kind of going from medicine, very sensible job, to, an architect, as a woman,
And that's a brave place for you to be, not necessarily having the support of a family or the mentors that exist within a family setup, to be courageous and so brave to make a decision. This is the career I'm going to launch myself within.
Yeah, and I kind of really felt that in university. I went to Glasgow University, and by the skin of my teeth, I got in. Literally crying down to the administrator. I was like, please just let me in. I'm just so excited. And I just felt really kind of out of place. I didn't, most of the students came from architectural backgrounds. Their parents were architects. It was very kind of, they knew what they were doing. And it literally took me 3 years to even understand what a concept was, because I would just everyone just kind of talk, and I'd have all these lectures, and I kind of understood the history. I really loved the history side of it, but the actual designing and the process of design was so alien to me. I had all these ideas, but I couldn't quite kind of funnel them into, good work. So I struggled quite a lot.
And within that 7-year process, what aspects of being an architect did you love and did you enjoy the most? Or actually, did you resent and did you not enjoy?
I loved that, again, kind of going back to expression, I loved this idea of a problem and then having to solve it through design and through but also make it kind of fabulous. So I think once I kind of got my head around it, I started to really enjoy it, and I loved the kind of the drawing side of it. Really bad at making models, so I didn't do much of that. And I think architecture is so kind of prescriptive, or architectural location is quite prescriptive. So if you don't kind of fit into those boxes, it's rather tricky. I found my kind of passion laid in the actual physical building of architecture. So as a student in my holidays, went back to North Wales and actually worked on building sites every summer. And I just thought, it was kind of two things. I love that side of it, but also as a woman on a building site, I felt very strongly that I had to know what I was talking about. I'd be talking to builders as a young woman then, not so much now, and I kind of wanted to understand the process and kind of see how hard it is. And working on building sites gave me a massive insight into that, and a huge respect for builders that I still have. You know, it's such hard work, it's such repetitive work. And you know, one of the guys, when I kind of left on my final summer, he was like, just remember what the size of a block is, and don't go changing. It's just, you know, and it's just having that understanding of what you draw, you know, the impact that has on a building site, and the more respect architects have for builders, the more respect builders have for architects, and then you can work together, and it becomes a lot more kind of a holistic process.
So you've identified yourself as the problem solver, somebody that gets stuff done and knows their stuff and works as part of a team. So how then does that translate into becoming a real architect? So you graduate, and then what happens?
So I graduated, and then you go you do your year out. I'd actually got a placement in Chicago for my year out, which I was just over the moon about, but it was just before 9/11. So that obviously horrendous thing that happened, they basically shut their borders, and you couldn't get a visa for love nor money. So that kind of obviously changed my trajectory a little bit, but I moved to Ireland instead, and I did my year out in Ireland, and it was challenging. Again, it was like being thrust into an office 24/7 and just kind of putting everything that you've learned into practice.
I read somewhere, Laura, I read somewhere that you were very proactive, and that you are a blue sky thinker in terms of you wrote about 10 letters, including one to Zaha Hadid.
Yeah. So that was when I was in school. That was my work experience. So right. Because it changed.
The sky's the limit with you.
Well, my A-levels were all set up to do medicine. My work experience was with, you know, in my dad's hospital. And then that kind of final work experience before you go to university, I was like, I'm going to have to get some experience somewhere. So I went to Real Library to get the yellow pages out. This was before Google. This was many years ago. And I basically wrote to 10 architects, including Zara Hadid, never got a reply from her, and to, 10 others. And I got a reply from Guy Greenfield Architects and another one, Crawford and Gray Architects, and they both offered me work experience. So I went down for a week, stayed with family friends, and I just had the most amazing time in Holland Park. So I had a week in Holland Park, and then I had 3 days with Guy Greenfield in what's it called? Tottenham Court Road, just off Tottenham Court Road. I just felt amazing. Getting lunch in London, I just felt amazing as like a 17-year-old girl. And Crawford and Gray invited me back for the summer. So I went back for the summer before uni and worked in their office. So I think it was, I think whenever you kind of want to do something, it's kind of getting stuck in as far and deep as possible. I basically folded papers for the summer, but it was just fabulous. It was just amazing.
So what's the process for you from going to being an employee to an employer with Lamp Architects?
So when I finished uni and you do a final year in practice before you qualify. So I wrote to Guy Greenfield and I said, because I'd had a few days with him, and I was like, I'd love to come and work with you, it'd be fantastic. And he just had a huge planning permission signed off. So he's like, yeah, we need somebody else, come down. So I was lucky in that respect that I managed to get a job fairly quickly.
I think you're modest
working with
well.
Guy.
I think you're modest. I think you're pretty cool.
Thank you. That's another thing. That's another whole topic of that kind of confidence in architecture. From how I've kind of, through university and through work and everything, coming to a point that I'm actually confident in what I've done has taken years. But anyway, so I started working with Guy, and he's a developer as well as an architect. So he was a really good mentor. And by the end of my kind of 5-6 years with him, I was kind of running the practice. I was office manager, I was all sorts of things. But he was always really proactive in telling me to find something that I could develop myself. And so I found the toilet. So, looking around, I was trying to find something, something kind of small and micro, because that was my budget. And I found these underground toilets.
Yeah, let's discuss this. So these were derelict toilets within Crystal Palace, and this was a £20,000 site. And these were toilets. This was not a residential space.
These were toilets. So I moved to Sydenham, which is just outside Crystal Palace. I used to go little walks around southeast London. And I remember walking over these, over a pavement and seeing these glass lights in the floor. I think, what on earth are they? And, I realised that they must be kind of part of these toilets. There was like a gents and a ladies' entrance, and they were all covered in graffiti and painted brown and absolutely disgusting. And I was like, gosh, it must be quite a big space, because you could see the kind of the outline in the pavement. And I got slightly obsessed with them. I, tried to find out who owned them, wrote to the council, but it literally took 7 years as long as I'd taken to train, to get my hands on them, because they were like a weird ownership. They were in a corner between Bromley and Lambeth and Croydon. Nobody knew who owned them. They certainly didn't want to give them to me. And then I managed to persuade them that my kind of original idea was a gallery and a bar, maybe an independent cinema kind of thing. So that was my first design idea.
So one second, Laura, second. So Guy is your mentor, who you're working alongside, and he encourages you. He's an architect and also a developer, and he encourages you to find a site that you can breathe some light in. You are walking around your local area and randomly stumble across some glass bricks in the floor, for which you become obsessed with for 7 years.
Pretty much, yeah.
And multiple councils declare ownership over this site. And tell me about the process that unfolds.
When you put it like that, it makes me sound slightly nuts, but yeah, that's basically what happened.
I would say courageous, brave, resourceful, entrepreneurial.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's that process of not taking no for an answer, because I knew that this site was fabulous. I knew that it was a big site, and it was completely, I could see fabulous? The depth of it.
The depth.
Yeah, and the underneath the brown paint and the graffiti, I could see the original the enclosures for the stairs going down, and you could see the big soil stack, the big cast iron soil stack.
This is why you're known in the TV industry. This is why you're known in the TV industry as the girl with the Midas touch. Because you can turn problems. You can turn problem spaces into something glorious.
Toilets into fabulous flats. But I managed to get down into, and it literally took me like a year and a half to persuade somebody to take me down. So the caretaker came down with like a big bunch of keys, and we kind of tried all these keys in the padlock, and eventually we had to crowbar it open. I've got a picture of me and Mike, the caretaker, crowbarring these things open. So we went down, and they'd not been set inside for 30 odd years. They were closed down in the late 80s. And we kind of went down, and because the skylights were mainly broken, there was loads of like chicken bones. There's a chicken shop just outside. There's chicken bones. There was rubbish. It was thigh high with just crap. But through the glue, and there was even a cup on the side that still had the rim. You can see the tea had evaporated over the last 30 years. It was just like somebody left, and that was it.
And your feeling amidst all this is euphoria. This is an opportunity.
Yes, totally. You can see the original porcelain urinals on the wall. The ceilings were nearly 3 meters high, and the feeling of space down there. It was like a little kind of subterranean. I don't know. It's like a cave that nobody had set foot in 30 years.
No natural light.
Loads of natural light, because of all the skylights. So all the glass blocks were letting light in. Most of them were covered in blocks, but you could see how much light would be down there once they were all fixed. The ladies, the other side was a little bit more creepy because that was completely pitch black and slightly worrying. But, you know, just the idea of having this space built in 1929 underneath the pavement that everybody walks past every single day for years and years and years just kind of filled me with joy. So I started designing. At this point, I'd left Guy Greenfield and set up on my own. And I joined Architect Your Home for 3 years. And they set up this idea of the initial consultation where the architect goes to somebody's home, and rather than having a speculative kind of meeting, you do your design drawing there during the meeting and you get paid for it. So it was quite a nice transition from being gainfully employed to being self-employed, and getting paid for my time. So it worked out really, really well. So I'd set up on my own. I was designing these toilets with, you know, a little bit more experience, getting a little bit of money together.
Wait a second. So can I just stop you? We've jumped over a section. How then did anybody agree to you buying this space? What was your process there?
So I put together design ideas for a bar, gallery, cinema. So it was a kind of a commercial space in Crystal Palace. So this was by about 2008. So I'd had a basic agreement from the council, and all the kind of rejections from the council. I basically went to the head of Lambeth, Alan Vinyl at the time, and I said, look, I want to do something. This is just a derelict space in the middle of a fabulous, you know, suburb of Southeast London. What harm can it do? What's the worst that I could possibly do? And he was really sweet, and he said, you know what? You can have them. If you can do something great with them, you can have them. And he had that faith in me, which was fabulous. But unfortunately, he left, and I was left with somebody who didn't have quite so much faith in me. But so I'd kind of eventually had this outline agreement that I could convert them into a, you know, if I could get planning, then I could have them. So I got finance for it, and then the financial crash happened in 2008. So I was like, there's no way I can fund a commercial space. So I kind of, you know, I didn't want to let them go at all. And I carried on redesigning. And it was also when the smoking ban came in, when the smoking indoors ban came in. So I had to find some kind of smoking areas. And then I was like, well, actually, if I can have some outdoor space here and some, you know, exits, then I could actually live in here. And that was it. That was a light bulb moment. It was kind of finding outdoor spaces within this subterranean cave. And
this then, is also why you've become known as the architect who finds solutions.
Exactly. Using problems to find a solution. So then that just opened up a completely different avenue, and working around this space to create a livable flat. And that's when I got really obsessed with small space design and making something that was, I mean, it was 57 square meters, but making that really feel like a fabulous spatial flat, because obviously you're underground, there's no views out. And I kind of worked out this method of creating views within and having this kind of straight circulation that was also storage, like a kind of like a, you know, like a bracelet almost with the spaces coming off. And it was a kind of my next light bulb moment that I loved this process of design, and that I was all right at it.
Yeah, and the media also thought you were all right at it, because your completed project went viral on social media, didn't it? It caused quite a media storm.
Yeah, it did. And I because I'd actually applied for Grand Designs. I said, look, I've got these toilets, they're fabulous, they're going to be amazing, sent all my drawings, sent everything over, and they're like, they're a bit too small for us. So I was like, okay. And I remember, you know, and I did all the work myself, so I worked on it myself. And I remember kind of cleaning it and bleaching it and going down with, you know, hammers and everything, trying to kind of do that initial clear up before the builders came. And I remember thinking, this is actually quite an interesting project. You know, it'd be interesting to see how it goes down. And one of my best pals, Fiona, is a photographer, and she came at all the stages and took some incredible photographs of it, which are on my blog. So I think that, coupled with this really unusual project, you know, having fabulous, really good photographs of it, it definitely captures people's imaginations. And then Amazing Spaces got in touch, and they wanted to put it on the show. So it was finished by then, just about. But yeah, so that's where I got into television, through George Clark and through Amazing Spaces.
And tell me about your trajectory into television. How did that come about, and how do you enjoy being on television versus doing your everyday work in an office?
Yeah. Well, I owe an awful lot to George, to be fair. So I was on the first episode of the first series of Amazing Spaces, along with Max McMurdo and Will Hardy, obviously. And I really liked it. It was again, I think that exhibitionist side of me. I kind of love getting dressed up. I loved, you know, kind of doing that side of it. And it was great to meet him, and he was, you know, brilliant. So we did that, and then I was asked to do the Christmas special with Max and Will as well for the second series. So we did that, and we had to, you kind of set the toilets up as this lovely Christmas set, and I made little George decorations and some gingerbread female and male toilet signs and things like that. So yeah, kind of really went to town. And then I got into Shed of the Year from Amazing Spaces as well. And I think it was never something that I intended to do. I did a couple of kind of pilots and things like that, and I was always told, have a look, you know, make sure you're unforgettable. And I don't think I was just like, I don't quite know how to do that, so I didn't. And I think I've never really had the kind of the television, you know, look. I'm never that, oh yeah, you know, that girl with whatever, you know. I just, you know, I'll tell people now about the toilets, and they'll be like, oh yeah, oh no, I love that. Or I'd say about the Shed of the Year, and they said there was a female judge on Shed of the Year. You know, I've just never been that kind of TV presence, because it's never been something that I really wanted to pursue.
Well, I think you actually are a TV presence. I mean, if you look at your social media on Instagram, I think you have, you know, tens of thousands of followers. You are clearly loved and highly respected in your community, and by many people who leave the hundreds of comments on each of your Instagram posts.
I think that's from the wonderful thing about Your Home Made Perfect was, because obviously I did Ugly House and things like that. Ugly House is a lovely house as well. But the wonderful thing about Your Home Made Perfect, which I knew it was going to be a special programme. I'd fallen out of love with telly. I wasn't going to do any more after the last Ugly House that I did. And I was kind of, you know, I saw the potential in it. And I think the wonderful thing about it is that Robert and I did this, you know, we did 16 projects together over two series. And you really kind of get to know us as people, you know, and architects and our styles, which you don't get in normal projects. So I think that was the turning point for me being on TV. It was that kind of, people felt that they know me, and they, you know, they do. I'm very much myself on TV. And I'll get stopped in the street and people will be like, oh my God, I put a Velux in my kitchen and I'm just so happy, you know, or like, I turned the bottom of my stairs and thank you to you, you know. And that makes me so happy that what I'm doing is is translating, and people going, oh yeah, that's such a simple move, but it makes a massive difference. So the show has been really, really instrumental in kind of catapulting me and Robert to the mainstream.
I've interviewed Robert. What a fabulous guy. How did you enjoy working with him?
He's amazing. And it's so funny, we both come from such different worlds, such different backgrounds. And then we'll kind of look at our designs. I'm like, oh, that's my design, but backwards, or oh, that's that, but turn that way. You know, it's so interesting how you can kind of come to one, you know, a really similar design solution, although it looks completely different. You know, the bones of it, the concept is kind of really similar. So yeah, it was fascinating working with him. And we did all 16 projects, went all the way around the country for months, and we never saw each other's designs. So those reveals, those VR reveals, when I'm like eyeballs in the sky, it was completely genuine. So yeah, it was a really intense few months.
So if we can talk about your passion for micro regeneration, which I'm assuming was born from your purchase of these toilets in Crystal Palace. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel you've differentiated yourself in this sector of micro regeneration?
I think it started because of, literally budget. I couldn't just say, oh, I'd like to buy this 300 grand site. But I think what's really interesting about it is that this little toilet that kind of sat there, abandoned, unloved for years, is on a parade of shops, which they were pretty kind of, not fabulous. And I spent a lot of my budget on renovating the outside of them, but I couldn't afford to do all the way around. So I've done the street facing elevation. I had properly rendered by a company that actually do the cenotaph in London, and then I painted the street facing side the same colour. So it was just a way to kind of maximise the budget. But what impact that's had is the street. The cafe opposite has now got a terrace outside with, awnings and things. We've got a really nice elevation, and, there's a couple of nice shops. I'm not saying that that's all because of the toilets, but I think it's amazing the difference that one little small move can make. And you kind of think about these like horrible, nasty corners in, streets and street scenes, and actually just giving them a little bit of love and attention, whether that's a gorgeous mural, whether that's some kind of community thing or a pocket garden, makes such a huge difference. And I think I've always just naturally gravitated to those smaller projects. I've never wanted to do skyscrapers or anything like that. I kind of love the really hands-on, that I can actually build it myself. I think that really inspires me.
And you've clearly got a love and a passion that's directly attached to these smaller spaces. And also that's been echoed, if you think about it, in your TV career, from ugly house to lovely house. That's an interesting process, that, some people might kind of dismiss these smaller places as being areas that are incapable of breathing love and care into them, and you've clearly bucked that system.
Yeah, I love that idea that again, financially you can look at something and go, nobody's going to look at this with any love and care, and actually go, well, if we do this, this and this and this, we can make something fabulous. So I kind of love the idea of bringing this little kind of slightly decrepit donkey to this fantastic racehorse, kind of cost effectively, and make it fabulous and beautiful. And I think I love doing that. So that's definitely my passion, that kind of the small scale where it's really tangible. It's a real tangible change.
Are there any sites or any areas in the world that you would love to get your hands on? Sprinkle your magic.
Oh, that is a fabulous question. I recently designed a house in Ghana, and in Aburi in Ghana, which I've kind of completely fallen in love with. So that's actually on pause at the moment, sadly, but we were kind of all geared out to visit and everything. And I could, when I was kind of talking with the clients, and we were looking at how the sun rises and the just how everything kind of works. It's so different, obviously, to Britain, where we've got sunrise in the west, blah, blah, blah. The sun is so different. The sunrise and sunset is completely the same throughout the year. And I think it was just that moment where you think, wow, I've been so conditioned to designing in Europe and Britain that I would love to go somewhere and really kind of experience a different climate, a different, at the equator, and how different that is and how it affects that differently. So yeah, Ghana is my is my dream place.
Can you give some examples of micro spaces that you've worked with either on your show or in your practice? Maybe it'll inspire somebody listening to this podcast. Oh, I've got a shed or a small space, within my home that's unused. And we can turn it from that into this. A couple of examples, Laura.
Oh, blimey. I think, well, funny enough, I think staircases are a really good micro kind of little element, and I think we're so used to thinking them as this kind of, you shove everything in, a couple of hoovers and things like that, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's under the stairs, oh my goodness, the thought of having to retrieve something out from underneath the stairs. But actually they can become really beautiful bits of carpentry and joinery, and I generally always look, the stair for me always seems to unlock loads of different problems. So I love to move a stair or shift a stair or change a stair slightly. So I think looking at that as a different, as kind of a bit of joinery inside your home, and all that can open up, whether that's getting utility space in it, whether it's getting a little loo in it, whether it's storage, and kind of creating this really beautiful little architectural kind of masterpiece in your home. There is a fabulous micro space.
You did a program about sheds, did you say? What was that program?
I did, yeah 4 years of
with George Clark,
Shed of the Year. Yes, so it was kind of on the back of Amazing Spaces, and it's a long running series anyway, Shed of the Year, which was set up by Andrew Wilcox years and years ago, and then it was so televised, picked up by Amazing Spaces and televised, and yeah, I mean, all over the country for 4 years, visiting all these kind of crazy sheds in every corner of the world, doing loads, well, not corner of the world, every corner of Britain, doing loads of different things, from like housing a tractor, paraphernalia, to a ranch, and yeah, just absolutely crazy. I think a shed, I like building my own thing, and something like a shed. I've just redone, we've got an old shed in our garden, and I've just done that up, and yeah, it's amazing what you can achieve, and amazing, you kind of look at something.
I'd love to put a hydraulic system in a shed. Can you imagine? It'd be like a Jedi shed. So you could drive it, you could just walk into a space, and can you imagine it decked out, maybe in kind of like something incognito, so you could have all your tools, and then close the door behind you, press a button, the hydraulics can take you downstairs. Like, what's that show, Meet the Fockers? Did you see that? And he worked for the CIA, and he had this like Winnebago thing, and he pressed a button, and then he went down, and then it was kind of this like mystery world that nobody knew about unless you knew where this button.
Oh my goodness, you have to get Colin Furzies on your on your podcast. He is an engineer, and he was on Shed of the Year. So I met him on Shed of the Year, and he's got this really ordinary shed, and you walk in at the bottom of his garden, and you're like, all right, okay. And then he pulls back a carpet, opens up a hatch, and you go down underground, and he's built this massive bunker, and we were playing, and he's got all these like mad inventions. He's made electric shoes that can walk around. Colin Furzies is fabulous, and he's literally just dug from his bunker back to his own home, so he's got this incredible space, and he'd made a electric guitar that fired fire. So we were playing, I was like, loads of fire over it. Yeah, you have to get him on. He's absolutely incredible. He's your man for a hydraulic shed.
Right, written his name down. Laura, how would people identify with your designs? Could they walk into one of your concepts? Laura's designed this.
I think so, yeah. I get loads of messages saying, oh, I've designed a Laura Jane Clark hallway, or I've designed a Laura Jane Clark staircase, and it's so lovely.
What's your vibe? What's the vibe? What's the Laura Clark vibe?
I think it's that view all the way through, and I think I always look to make this really simple circulation, this kind of like, that you never feel like you're in a corridor. It's about kind of light and space and utility rooms. That's my vibe. Storage and utility.
Tell me about some natty storage systems. I love storage.
I think it's such a good thing. You can have the best, craziest design in the whole wide world, but if you've got your pants and your trousers on your radiators to dry them, then it kind of ruins everything. So, utility spaces are fabulous. Storage is fabulous, but it does other things. It can kind of, if you have a house that doesn't, if the layout's a little bit kind of weird, or if you've got some kind of sections of wall that, you don't get kind of really lovely kind of flow lines through it, you can kind of create some sleek lines, and then behind that line, behind that kind of line of flow, you can put all sorts of things, storage, you can have open shelves. It's about creating, for me, it's about creating simplicity in the home, and whether that's view or circulation. And by doing that, you kind of create these spaces that just work so practically. So whether they're open up, like you said, whether they open up to become a little kind of reading nook, or whether they're floor to ceiling doors that kind of hide loads of, toys, or, kitchen, whatever. I think it's kind of getting that view, getting that flow through, and then everything else falls off.
One of my favorite space saving, I don't know what you call it, tips is the top of wardrobes. Have you seen them? The Kardashians inspired me. And there's often a dead space at the top of wardrobes, and there's this special hinge system which you can throw a hook over, pull out, and then your clothes will be kind of shifted from this hard to get to nook in the back of a wardrobe, and that you need two people to kind of tower into. Throw the hook, pull it out, voila, there's your clothes. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Love storage solutions. So what do you think about trends? What's your vibe? Like at the moment, people are talking about kind of the pastels and, the kind of, the, what do you call, lilacs and peaches. I mean, what's your pastel vibe?
I don't have a pastel vibe ever. It's not my not my jam at all. Not my jam. I was always into like heavy metal. I was always kind of grunge. I think I wouldn't do light pink unless it was kind of a matter of life or death. But I do like it on buildings. I do like it, kind of tiles. I can see it, but I would never have it in my own home. I love it when I look at it, but it's not something I want to see every day. I think as most architects just paint everything white, wooden floors, paint it white. And I used to be like that. And my home that I grew up in Wales was all very white and very architectural and very kind of, stern. I did a project in Glasgow. When we moved up to Glasgow, we found an old tenement that was, was abandoned, a repossession. And I'd done the design. I kind of knew how it was going to work. It was going to be fabulous. And in my head, it was all going to be painted white. It's going to be this really kind of light, airy, Victorian tenement. And then when we were renovating, I was peeling off this old like peach velour wallpaper. And behind it was this incredible blood red stained plaster, and it had the original stenciling on it from the Victorian era. And it was this really dark red wall. So we kind of stripped it all off, and the whole thing was there. The whole original plaster was there. And it just blew my mind. And I was like, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. There's no way I can paint over it, and there's no way the rest of the flat can then be white with this great big red wall. So I started kind of thinking about different textures, different colours, and that's when my love of really dark colours kind of came into its own. And I kind of realised that I wear the same colours that I put up. I love mustards and dark blues and black. I mean, I'd wear black every day of the week if I could. Our kitchen's painted black. I think it's those colours that make me feel really comfortable, and they're just, I mean, I don't necessarily go on trends unless the trend is something I like dark colours and black kitchens and exposed walls and things. So I kind of just go for what I love.
what you love. Yeah. And you've got a book. You've just completed a book recently. Congratulations.
Yeah, just
what's the title? Can you tell us?
The title is, I think so, is going to be announced very shortly. The title is The Handbook of Home Design, an Architect's Blueprint to Shaping Your Home.
Ooh.
So it's a long title, but the working title was Design Home. So that obviously got expanded.
Is this telling us how to do it ourselves? So bluff your way in architecture. Ooh, love it.
Well, kind of. It is. I get loads and loads of people asking for initial consultations over the years, and sometimes they'll come to me with plans that have gone all the way through to planning that they're not happy with, the homeowners aren't happy with. And they're kind of like, well, we didn't really know what to say. We didn't know kind of what we wanted, really. So, and it kind of makes me really sad that it's something, our homes are so important to us. And especially these last couple of years, we've kind of not been able to go shut the door on it and go to work and forget about it, you know? And I want to bridge that gap from the kind of using the way I design to give homeowners a kind of an insight into how to kind of get what they want. So it's not replacing an architect, but it's giving them knowledge, you know, all the way down from abbreviations on drawings to how to create kind of light, how to bring light and flow and circulation into your space, so that they can then have this beautiful book that's a coffee table book. It's got fabulous photographs in it, it's inspiring. But also, if they say, oh, can I put my utility space underneath my stairs? And they go, oh, the builder goes, no. And they go, well, actually, because we've got this and this in my little book, you know, it'll just give them that confidence to say, this is what I want, this is how I want it, and this is how we're going to work together. So that's the idea of the book. I'm so excited about it.
Good luck. It sounds wonderful. So you're actually ripping away kind of, you know, the sheet that many people kind of hide behind. What's the word? Mysticism. You're unveiling the mysticism behind the industry. Is that English?
Yeah, demystifying the process.
Thank you, Laura.
And all architects work differently, and I'm sure you know it wouldn't work for everybody, but I get so many inquiries, I get so many people, you know, just like, how do you kind of look at it? And it's just showing them how I would look at it. So I'm like their little kind of architect on the shoulder, kind of saying, you know, guiding their way through the process, but not in a kind of, you know, there's no one size fits all. And even a house that was kind of identical to next door, you'd still not necessarily put the same design in. So it's looking at the process and just giving people an insight into the way I design, to empower them.
So I'm going to call you Florence Nightingale or the Alan Sugar. You choose. Laura, thank you so much for your time, and next time you're in London, please come into our studio, because it'd be fabulous to meet you in person. I've loved having you on the Designerati podcast, and really good luck with your book. Please sign one and send one to us. Everyone that comes on the show is giving their books. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And you, thank you so much.
See you soon. Thank you, Laura. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please like and subscribe, and join me here every Monday for more from the Designerati podcast team. See you then.